Some of you might already know I was away. That's why there hasn't been any videos. I went to Vancouver on my family holiday, and I was inspired there to create a beach cookie. So I'm going to be doing this on a simple round cookie, and I just want to create like an organic kind of looking thing, like how the wave would come into the sand. So that kind of looks like a yin and yang, but we'll do this one here different, like that. Another one here. And there we go. So now I'm just going to fill these quickly. And so I'm making the blue, I'm doing the blue first because I'm going to be adding sanding sugar for the beach, the sand area. And so I don't want the sand to glue to my blue icing. And so I'm doing the blue icing the night before, so that's very dry, and I won't have to worry about it having sand in it. I want it to be nice and crisp and clean water, not murky mud. A little bit more icing over here. And there we go. So there. Simple as that. I'm going to do it in two variations. I'm going to leave some of them in this simple blue, and I'm going to create some waves with my airbrush on some of them so that we can see the difference and to see if you know, if you're going to need to buy yourself an airbrush. Here's the round, and so this is bare, this is where the beach sand is going to be, so I'm just shooting here some blue off of the edge. You absolutely have to do this before you add the sand, or else it'll make a mess. So now here I'm using my template, placing it, doesn't really matter where. You can hold it with your hand. It doesn't have to be perfect because the blue is getting everywhere. It's just to create these lines. So airbrush and follow your paper. Move the paper a little bit. Shoot again. Move it a little bit. And there we go. Creates some waves. Here, if we compare the two, you can see just this one, it gives it a little bit of interest, you know. I think I'm going to pearl all my blue because, you know, a real Caribbean beach would have shiny water, and I think that'll make it look a little bit more realistic. I don't know if you can see the shine from the pearl, but it really does add a lot of, you know, to the cookie. It really makes it much prettier. The water should be shiny. Here's the round cookie. It's dry now. The airbrush is dry, and so the sanding sugar won't stick. And so we're just going to fill this area. Balance of what's left to decorate. My cookie got a little warped in the oven. My round is not perfect. I placed them too close to each other on the cookie sheet, and so they welded together and impacted my round. But anyway, it's just a demo, so it's fine. So there we go. So that's all filled up. And now with the sanding sugar, I'm doing it on the bead tray so I can collect my sanding sugar. And then I just knock off the excess. And with a brush here, I can just brush off the sanding sugar. It seems to be, when you do airbrush, it's always a little bit kind of tacky. But it comes off easily there. I wouldn't do it with your hand. And don't blow on your cookies. You wouldn't want someone blowing on your cookie. And there we go. So the beach is almost done. There we go. Can you see getting the wave, and then here's the sand. Once we do the white accent icing and put a shell in the sand, it's really going to bring the little beach to life. Next step of the beach cookie. So I've got some white icing in my piping bag, which is basically a piping consistency. And so right on the seam where the two colors meet, I'm just going to zigzag, hiding that seam with white icing back and forth, super easy. You don't have to be careful. And now with a dry brush, usually they recommend a damp brush, but because I had pearled my surface prior, if I put moisture on my brush, it'll damage my finish. And there we go. I'm pulling the white to create the foam, you know, when it hits the beach. And so I'm going to follow this curve here. And this time I'm going to make it a bit shorter. So here's sticking up a bit, just push it in. Pull this down. And there we go. And then again here. And there we have the waves crashing in onto the beach. The brush, I got it from Flour Confections, and you can see here I filled it with the cornstarch. It opens here, you turn like a little screw, and then you can just spoon it in there, and then you close it. Here there's a little thing to push forward to keep the bristles nicely shaped, and then when you put the cover on, they're protected. Because if it doesn't have that little plastic thing, when you put the top on, you're going to bend back your bristles. So I'm going to show you on this black surface. So I'm pumping to get the cornstarch down, and you see it's not a lot coming out. It's just a little bit, because if you over apply the cornstarch, it can actually, like, you know, it looks, you see the dust on your fondant or your gum paste, and it, you know, sometimes it's not easy to get it off. It's like it sticks on. You're going to need to pull a steamer out to get it cleaned up. I got this silicone mold from Flour Confections. I absolutely love it. It's the perfect size for cookies. Of course you can make your shells out of royal icing, but they're just not going to be at the same level. These are actual shells that they use to make the molds, and therefore obviously they look very real. And so the silicone mold is soft, so they're easy to pop out, and with the brush that I showed you earlier, it allows you to just do a very light dusting of the cornstarch so that it doesn't stick inside of it, and with your little ball of fondant you push it in the shell that you want to do, and with your thumb you're pushing off the excess. Just flatten it out, and then you can just, pushing from the top, pop it out, and there you go, the most perfect little shell to put on your cookie. There's every shape. When we were in Vancouver, my daughter always found the same shell. It was pretty much this one. I think it's like an oyster type thing. And she was, you know, kind of disappointed. And then she'd find something along these lines, and it was usually broken, but she was so excited. So this mold is fun because you can really get an assortment of shells. So you just push it in. This fondant is a bit hard, which is actually ideal. Because if your fondant is very soft, when you pop out your thing, whatever you're making will get deformed slightly. So this is ideal. And there we go. These are fun too. Now I'm making these in white because I'm going to be making them, I'm going to color them with my airbrush. But I realize not everybody has an airbrush. I am making my seashells white because I have an airbrush and that's how I anticipate coloring them, but I realize not all of you have this. And so the other way to get some color on them is to marble the fondant before you put it in. So the ratio of color to white is very, I'd say 25 to 75. So a quarter. So what I did here is I made 2 snakes, one chocolate brown one and one just regular white, and you just kind of twist it and it'll slowly marble. Keep twisting. You don't want to knead because then it just becomes a big mishmash of the 2 colors together. That's not what we're going for. We're going for more of a marbling. So I'm twisting the 2 snakes together, and as I twist, the brown one is spread through the... I just keep twisting and then I bend it in half and I twist. So now I like this little part here. I'm going to push this into that one. There had been cornstarch in that hole. It's in exactly the right size. If you want, you can just put a bit of cornstarch on the back so that when you pop it out, the surface you put it on to dry, it doesn't stick. And there you go. A marble kind of colored shell. Maybe there's even too much of the brown to this, so if you wanted, you could take this and then do that into a snake and put that against the white, so then it's even a lighter marbling and it might look even more realistic. So you just, like I said, twist it. There we go. And then you can just break off a little ball and then pop that in your mold with your thumb. Remove your excess. It's a little stickier now because of that brown was not as hard. So I'm just gonna, I wasn't putting the cornstarch on the back before because it wasn't sticky, but the brown has made it sticky. And there you go, you see. So this is a good way to marble your shells if you don't have an airbrush. You can have the shells to put on cupcakes too. You do a little swirl of blue frosting and place a couple of shells on there. And it's very simple, but because they look so real, it really takes it to another level. So the marbling, because it's a seashell, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, it's natural, and all of them look nice. And there we go. When I make my fondant decorations, I place them on this kind of, it's like a screen, and I got this a long time ago. It's actually to put on your frying pan so the grease doesn't spatter out all over the place. I never used it for that, but it's great because you can move them around and the air gets under and they dry faster. Here are my completed seashells. I have to tell you, I'm really liking these shapes here. These are really pretty. I left these white because they're often actually white, and so I figured, why mess with a good thing? And so these are going to be the perfect little accent to my beach cookies. The water's perfect. We're walking on the beach. The only thing missing, what everybody's looking for, are some seashells. So here they are. The perfect little final touch to these cookies. These little seashells just glam it up. These would be so cute at a beach theme wedding or a beach theme bridal shower. They're very fancy but simple to make. Here is a little variation of a cupcake topper for the little beach theme. So I just made it on a smaller circle, and that's fondant dried, and I decorated it in the same way. Here, instead of adding the brown royal icing and flooding, I just brushed water on, and that was enough to glue the sanding sugar. And then I did the same steps. Added the little seashell and perfect little cupcake topper. Here is the drawing of my sand castle. I do have a castle cutter, but it's on a large size, and I was trying to keep it, reasonable. And so there's the wedding cake cutters are often in very, a lot of different sizes, and so you can make the one that's right for you. Here you can see it's pretty simple and straightforward. Here is the black that I, painted on the cookie, so for the depth, and here's my wave. And so I'm not quite decided if I'm going to do the whole thing in sanding sugar, if I'm just going to do the outlines, because I find a lot of sanding sugar isn't necessarily the tastiest thing. But here is the rough drawing for you to see where I'm coming from. I'm working on some sand castles, and to create some dimension, some depth in the cookie, I'm going to be painting the background black. You could use chocolate brown as well, but I'm using black just because that's what I have and I don't feel like mixing more. And there we go. So I'm just, doesn't have to be thick coat. The point is exactly that it's thin. I just need to color the cookie. The next layer of icing is what's actually going to be the layer of decorative icing. This is nothing but a background. And so the last one here. There we go. And so these have to be nice and dry, so I'm making these the night before because I'm going to be putting sanding sugar. And so I need this to be very dry so that it doesn't stick. My sanding sugar doesn't stick. You see here now, this edge, I might have gotten a little bit too high with the black. We'll see tomorrow when the decorating goes, I'll finagle to fix that. Here's the sand castle. I wanted to have, it's all going to be kind of brown, boring. So I was trying to figure out a way to add a little bit of something, just some color. So I'm going to add a wave to the bottom of the cookie just to add some color so that it's not too blah. So there we go, as simple as that. Here's the castle. So I did the black background, I added the blue, dusted that with the airbrush, and now I've outlined my castle. And so when I flood all these areas, I'm going to let this all dry, and I'm going to fill this in with sanding sugar and create the castle. I'm going to try to do one with sanding sugar and one without and see which one looks better. So I'm going to I switched my tip out to a 2, just because it is a small cookie and I was having trouble. So here, it doesn't have to be perfect because the sanding sugar is really forgiving when it comes to blemishes or whatever little imperfections. The sanding sugar hides it all. If you're not that great at piping outlines, if you dip your cookie in sanding sugar, it makes it look perfect. And there we go. And as you can see here, you can see the windows, the black in the windows makes it look like they're cut out, you see? For this cookie here, I'm not going to put any sanding sugar on this one. I want to see how it's going to look if we just outline it in sanding sugar. So we're going to do kind of the reverse on this particular one. So once it's all done, we're going to add just to the outline sanding sugar. So make sure to fill your 2 sections separately so that you maintain that definition of the 2 sections. Here's the sandcastle. And so I added that blue for it to have a bit of color on it, you know, and so I'm just going to create the foam on this cookie as well. So I'm just pulling it down. I'm out of frame. There we go. So I had airbrushed the edge darker blue. Obviously it's completely hidden and was pointless, but I didn't know that at that point. So there we go. More kid version of the beach cookie. And so I had said I was doing it both ways, with the sanding sugar and without. And I'll leave it up to you which you prefer. I have to say, I think I like this one. It really gives it more of a sandcastle feel. And I had anticipated putting a flag up here. And after I found this, I looked at this shape, I thought it would make the perfect flag. So I just have to put the pole, and then I'll attach that here. And then at the door of the castle, you can put some seashells. You know, like you would imagine your children decorating a sandcastle on the beach. They'd rummage through the sand looking for shells to accent their castle. Here's the finished little sandcastle. And there's the beach. Up to you which you prefer. I have to say the beach is very fancy, elegant. The little sandcastle's fun. You could include maybe a flip-flop cookie or something like that with it if you wanted to do a set.